Okay. Okay, so we're doing part, I think, 3 of our disclosures class. We're logging into the, keep in mind it is still the beta version, so if you are having challenges with WinForms, ZipForms, what are we calling it these days? Is it ZipForms?
It is ZipForms, it's WinForms.
ZipForms plus WinForms, Forms, CAR Forms, Online Forms, whatever. Keep in mind it is still the beta test version, so if you're having trouble with it, I guess that's to be expected because it's beta tested.
Yes.
For Griselda and Bella, if you haven't quite gone through this yet, we do not have paper forms anymore. Okay? So it used to be in the old days, you'd come into the office, you'd open the drawer, you'd pull out, you know, your carbon copies with all of your stuff. Those days, frankly, have been gone for a very, very long time. Although there are still agents that handwrite them and they, you know, Xerox them off, and you can still go buy a carbonless form. But for the most part, I would say the industry is adapted to the electronic zip forms, 90+%. Quite honestly, everybody in this office should be using them, 100%. The occasional one-off where the computer's down and you grab a copy, that's fine, but generally speaking, we need to do that. Hopefully, in the next, every day that goes by, we will also start to adapt into the electronic signatures. I mean, those have been a long time coming. That electronic signatures available for over 10 years. Electronic signatures were passed into law by Bill Clinton. And I think that was done in the last year of his second term, so I think it was 1997 or 1998. So we've had electronic signatures available now for 15 years, and I would suggest that probably less than 10% of the agents actually use them.
Well, when are the banks going to start allowing them?
Well, they actually do now. Fannie and Freddie allow electronic signatures.
The B of A's not.
You know, Fannie and Freddie changed. As a matter of fact, it's funny because I had missed the memo. And I standing up in a class like this and said, oh, by the way, you know, if you do it, remember, Fannie and Freddie won't accept those. And then Drew popped up and said, get with it. We changed that 6 months ago. So the banks are allowing electronic. Having said that, I got to tell you, I've noticed that some electronic signatures they seem to like better than others. Okay? But anyway, we'll see. So you do have electronic signatures within ZipForms. I know Debbie uses the electronic signatures within SkySlope. She constantly tells me how she loves it. I have not experienced as much of that in SkySlope myself. I just frankly just haven't spent the time doing that, but I know Drew's working on it now. Okay, so let's, gosh, I don't remember what transaction we used. Darn it.
It was an REO. Janet was
I thought I
in
made a training one though. I really do. Probably have so many darn transactions in here. It just takes forever to sort them. Well, heck. You know, it's trying to sort it.
If you go to sort date modified, you might be able to find it.
Oh, you can do that.
Yeah, go sort. Right there where you were at. Up, back up.
No,
right.
I've got a thing running here. I'm trying to stop it. I went to, well, again, we mention this every time. I have thousands of transactions saved in here. I really need to go through and purge a whole bunch of them just to purge them. You know, I think most of you will probably have, you know, 5, 10, maybe 100 or 200. But there's literally thousands of them in here. But let's do a little training here with Robert's prompting. Sort by, date modify, there you go. So let's see how long it takes to sort those. I think it's doing it.
You clicked it?
I did. But again, there's so many of them.
Yeah.
First lesson.
Yeah, it's long. It's a long running script. Yeah.
Well, it is, and you can see, you know, this was modified an hour ago. This was 20 hours ago. Okay, we're not going to wait for that. We'll just pull up Heartland, and we'll mess it up. Janet or somebody's going to be upset with me for corrupting her file. No,
She'll get over it.
I don't want to close the program. Okay, hopefully this thing's going to refresh. Refresh. Okay, while we're waiting for it to refresh, let's multitask here a little bit. I do expect today we're going to finish the disclosures. This will be our third 2-hour class on disclosures. And for those of you that are new, Griselda, I don't know if I mentioned this to you before, if you can't stick around until 3 o'clock, don't panic. You know, you can leave at 2, leave at 2:30. If you got to go to the restroom, we don't take breaks. Just get up, go to the restroom, don't worry about it. But we will finish the rest of these forms today. And again, I believe, looks like I thought I saw our wind forms just blink at us. So I think we're, I didn't want to log out. Alright, let's try it again.
And we wonder where Michael gets his computer.
Right,
charges.
you said there you go, Michael. Then you wonder why, I'm struggling. I'm struggling! Alright, so we will finish those forms today. So it'll take a second to log back in, so while we're logging back in, let's go back to the screen I was at. So we're going to finish up our statewide advisory, seller buyer statewide advisory. We'll talk a little bit, even though this isn't a disclosure, we'll take a moment, we'll talk about the termite, we'll talk about the booklet. Keep in mind the earthquake booklet is part of our natural hazard. Okay, so that all kind of, I kind of lump all that together. So we'll briefly review that. We've already done the agency, we will go through the avid disclosure. We'll go through the buyer's inspection advisory, the waiver, the DA, those forms that represent more than one buyers. We'll go over the, for your protection, get a home inspection, market conditions, verification, that's your walkthrough form. Affiliated service, that's the contract that, or the disclosure that says we own more than one company. So we're going to go through quite a bit in the next 2 hours, and we will hopefully finish our disclosure class. It may seem like a lot, but most of those forms are only 1 page long, and they don't really require too much explanation. That being said, I was mentioned earlier, I was doing this broker seminar for the Women's Council of Realtors yesterday. And there was 5, 6 brokers on the panel. I was fortunate enough to be invited to some real quality brokers. But one of the things that all of us seem to be trying to convey to the group, again this is brokers talking to agents, is 2 things. If you're a newer agent in the business and you're struggling on the perfect presentation, the perfect listing presentation, you know, like, I don't really want to work with the buyers yet until I understand everything perfectly. Don't let, don't sacrifice good for perfect, okay? I guess what I'm saying is I'm giving you permission to make a mistake or two. Okay? There's too many agents in the business that will not engage into the business because they don't feel that they have enough knowledge yet. And I get that. And as your broker, the last thing in the world I want you doing is going out and literally practicing on the public, embarrassing yourself, embarrassing me, embarrassing the company. Having said that, you know, it's okay to tell a client, hey, I'm new. You're my first buyer. Now, our natural resistance is to say, oh, I don't want to tell them that because they're going to run for the hills. They might. Okay, that's okay. It's okay to tell that seller, hey, you know, I've been on, you're my 5th listing appointment and hopefully you'll be my 1st. Nobody's listed with me yet. I understand the reservation on not wanting to share that information. But I guess what I'm telling you is I would rather you do that and go on as many appointments as you can and work with many as clients as you can, as opposed to what I see so often. And I see agents that have been in the business for 1, 2, 3, 4 years and have only been on maybe 4 listing appointments and maybe only gotten 1 listing. And they're still trying to get it perfect. I would much rather you have gone out in the first 4 months of your business and gone out on 30 listing appointments, because that's the only way you're going to learn. And yeah, when you're on a listing appointment 30, you'll look back on listing appointment number 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, and you'll say, oh my gosh, I can't believe what I did. I can't believe what I said. How embarrassing was that? But that's how you learn. My first listing appointment I was 20 years old. Listing appointment, I looked like I was 16. So I mean, when I went out and I told them, I said, hey, I'm new to the business, they're like, of course you're new to the business. Do you have a driver's license? Are you literally, forget about your real estate license, are you old enough to drive a car? So they knew from the beginning I didn't have 20 years of experience. But anyway, the listing appointment took me 3 hours. I didn't get it, by the way. I just was talking and talking and talking and talking. I figured the more I talked, the better chance I had of getting that listing. It was a terrible presentation. These people were so nice, and they just didn't have the heart to throw me out of their house. But I got to tell you, the first 8 months I was in the business, I did about 30 listing presentations. I was doing between 1 or 2 a week, knocking on doors. And I got to tell you, by appointment number 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, I had a pretty darn good presentation. Okay, so at any rate. All right, so here we are. Let's stop the tap dancing. And now that we've got the form up, we're looking for our sellers. What are we looking for? Statewide. Statewide buyer seller. There we go. That's the one we want. Okay, let's get it to load. And then we'll rock on here. Goodness gracious. No, we're not going to stop the script. Come on, baby. Is this the type of stuff you're experiencing, Michael? With just slow loading and things disappearing, or?
Yeah,
I don't know if this is. I don't think this is a zip forms problem. This is a Lance problem, and this is maybe a slow internet connection
for
problem.
me, I have already had 10 forms in there, and I was adding one more, and if it came on, it wasn't showing up on the, it wasn't showing up at all. So I tried to download, click it again and again, and it wasn't doing anything, so I had to go back to the old version again.
Right. All right. Well, come on, guys. Help me out. The internet gods are not shining on us favorably today.
The mic came up real quick.
What's that?
I think mine came up real quick.
Oh, did it?
Page,
Mine
yeah.
did too. Are you on the office
I-
Wi-Fi?
No, I'm actually on my Verizon, which is normally pretty good. I'm wondering if I truly wonder if it has something to do with
Everything you have in there?
I think I just
Yeah.
have too much stuff. I think I need to archive some stuff. We'll find out. Okay, so all right. So here's our little form. Anybody know, is the ZFX? Is that, I mean, zip form document? Is that what that stands for? Is it different than a? It must have a special little document extension title or something.
Column Express, I don't know.
Oh, Vegas.
Okay. Open. Well, I did. I think it's just, again, it's thinking. So, okay. Well, we left off at Melrose. So while we're waiting for the form to load, and I think I specifically said let's stop here at Melrose because Melrose takes a little bit of time to discuss. Okay. Who knows the history of Melrose? Anybody got the basics? Okay. Melrose are actually people. Okay, I don't remember their first names, but somebody, Mr. Mello and Mr. Ruse, I believe they were both Misters. Might have been a Mrs. in there. I may be wrong. But these actually are people. Okay. And then the California State Legislature, and they basically passed a law, which has now kind of become to know Melrose, that allows developers to, in the old days when you built a house, and this still is today, by the way, there's a lot of construction out there that does not have Melrose. Does not have Melrose. So, but in the old days, you would build a tract. So I'm going to build 200 houses on the north side of town. You go in and you apply for your city permits, building permits, and all the rest of that sort of stuff. And part of that process would involve, is there enough infrastructure or in and around the 200 homes that you're building, or does there need to be additional infrastructure? And if there is, well, the city doesn't pay for that. Okay, they want to push that. They want to push the cost of. And again, when I say infrastructure, it could be anything. We're getting pretty close here. Pass it? I don't remember going through that. Here, 34. So what they would do is they would sit back and say, okay, we need the basics, curbs, gutters, light poles. But we also need to widen the street to get to that. We also need to add an off-ramp, depending upon how big the project is. We might need to add an off-ramp to the freeway. So that's the type of stuff that they would basically, that would say, hey, in order for you to build this huge development on whatever part of town, the infrastructure needs to be in place. So the builders of the homes would be responsible to basically build out the infrastructure, or at least pay for the city to build out the infrastructure. So in the old days, let's just take it really simple, the builder would sit back and say, okay, it's going to cost $20 million to do whatever we need to do. They would take the $20 million, I'm oversimplifying this, but they take the $20 million, they would divide it by the number of houses that they're building, and they would raise the price by, $8,000 per house, whatever it happened to be. And now they would sell a house for $8,000 more, and people would own the house. They would have regular taxes, just the regular property taxes on their property, but they would not have any supplemental taxes, or Melrose taxes in this case, that was basically set for all of the build-outs. Again, and it could be anything from an off-ramp to maybe they needed to build a school or whatever it happened to be. So what the builders kind of did, I don't know if I may have this story a little bit wrong, but there was a proposal that was put into the legislature that said, hey, this is really expensive and you're hurting the sale of properties. You're making it too difficult and too expensive for people to buy houses. So we've got this great idea. How about we finance the infrastructure over a period of 20 or 30 years, and instead of us having to now sell these houses for $5, $10, $15, $20,000 more, we can sell them at a reduced price, and then individual homeowners can now pay off the bonds, which is basically what Melrose is. Melrose are bonds, okay? And most bonds are used to finance something. So now the developer and the city get together and say, okay, it's going to take $20 million to build whatever they have to build. They don't collect the money from the developer or from the sale of the project. Bonds are sold. So the California State Legislature basically passed an ability and a law that allowed this to happen. So you basically, now they're selling bonds. Who do you sell bonds? Well, you sell bonds to people who are buying bonds. There are all sorts of municipal bonds. People like that sort of stuff. It's a safe investment. An individual puts in $100,000 and they're guaranteed a 2.5% return. I don't know, whatever that happens to be. So they raise the money privately, and now these bonds have to be paid off over the 20-year windows. So now when a homeowner goes in to buy this house in a Melrose neighborhood, they get the price at X, but now what have they just committed themselves to? They've committed themselves to additional property taxes, and in this particular case, improvement bond, Melrose, community district, whatever, or it could be other special assessment districts. So now, instead of just paying the normal property taxes on the property, let's just call normal 1.25%, okay? Now they also get to pay the Melrose taxes. Depending upon the neighborhood, depending upon the improvements, we could be talking $1,000 a year for 20 years. Could be talking $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 or more dollars per year for 20 years. So the cost of those improvements are still pushed over to the homeowner, but they're now pushed over to the homeowner in the form of annual property tax payments in addition to the regular property tax payments they're making. So why is this such a big deal? First of all, the main thing that we need to know as real estate professionals is when you are representing a buyer and or a seller, you had better know what you are selling. In many, many ways. And one of those things that you would better know what you're selling is the property located in a Melrose assessment district or not? Will it have an impact on your transaction? Yes. Okay? In many ways. Okay? Specifically, let's, for example, say on the buy side of the transaction. I cannot tell you how many transactions that I have seen blow up because typically buyers, I want to buy a house. I go get myself qualified. Griselda's my lender. Griselda says, hey Lance, you can buy up to 200,000. Anything above that, you're pushing your luck. What did most buyers do?
Go back to 200.
They buy to 200,000. If the lender
Yeah.
says this is what I can buy, that's what they buy. Okay, I guess that's just how we are built.
Nature of the beast.
Okay, so this is the deal. So I'm now out. I'm looking for properties, and Robert's my agent, and Robert knows what's going on. Robert and I, when we're right there, we're pushing it. We get into escrow for 200,000. My loan's going along, everything's great, and then all of a sudden, oops, got Melrose taxes. $3,600 a year. Oops. Well, that's $300 a month. Now I turn to my lender. My lender says, that's the equivalent of adding $300 a month to my payment. I could qualify, let's just say I could qualify for a $1,500 a month payment. Well, now I just added $300 to that. My lender says, oh, Lance, if you're going to buy in the Melrose area, you're not buying a $200,000 price range, you're buying a $160,000 price range. You don't qualify for this house anymore. Okay. Now, I don't want to spend too much time on this because I do want to finish these forms today. But you remember when I went back earlier and I said, oh, and by the way, when the original argument for the builders, when they went to the state legislature, was, hey, we could sell this house for a little bit less. A strange thing has happened. Okay. Over the years, people seem to forget what's going on with Melrose. I cannot tell you how many people, by the way, have bought a house, closed an escrow, and did not know they had Melrose on the property until maybe the day or two before they closed. But they were so emotionally attached, so emotionally committed to that property, finding out that they had an extra $3,000 a year in taxes, even though they weren't happy about it, they continued on with the transaction. I got to tell you, I bet 50% of the people who live in Moreno Valley Ranch, for example, when they bought into there, they didn't know that they were going to have to pay more taxes than the people across the street. And when I say the people across the street, I won't name neighborhoods necessarily, but there are literally houses in Moreno Valley Ranch, and not just, we don't have to pick on them, let's just, because there's lots of neighborhoods, that when you go literally across the street, you're now outside Moreno Valley Ranch Association. The houses generally look exactly the same. You don't have an association dues, and guess what? You also don't have Melrose. You could have a $3,000 to $4,000 a year difference in the cost of owning that house. Okay. Now, in theory, what should that mean for the houses that have Melrose in compared to the houses that don't? They should sell for what? They should sell for less. The houses with Melrose should sell for less money than the house across the street, assuming all things are equal. The neighborhood's comparable, the house is comparable, the age, and all the rest of that sort of stuff. They should sell for less because they're basically, the cost is being kind of hidden. But something strange has happened. Do they sell for less? They really don't. They really don't. They basically sell for the same price. So, point being is, so now let's take that example. I'm an educated buyer. Basically, I have the exact same house. One with Melrose taxes, one without Melrose taxes. They're same square footage, generally speaking, that everything looks the same. They're both listed for $250,000. Which one do I buy? I buy the one without. Right? I buy the one without. Because I don't have an extra $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 a year. But again, so many people get hung up on that specific, and frankly, that is the fault of the realtor. It really is the fault of the realtor. Now, having said that, there's a lot of properties that are beautiful, and I would say absolutely buy the house. Understand you've got the Melrose. Don't not buy that house because that's Melrose. If it's where you want, it's the neighborhood you want, it's the price you want, and you as the consumer understand that this house will cost you X amount of dollars more for the next so many years, and most of these bonds are 20-year, some of them I think are 30-year bonds, which is why it's nice. We just picked on Moreno Valley Ranch. Well, how old is Moreno Valley Ranch? It's getting there.
Yeah.
It's getting pretty close. I think a lot of those Melrose bonds in Moreno Valley Ranch and a lot of those neighborhoods in Moreno Valley are going to be paid off in the next 3, 4, 5 years. Not a bad thing. So again, something you as the real estate professional need to know. So, now there's more to this than just Melrose. There are community assessment districts. Cities do this all the time. You're in a neighborhood, you're paying X amount of dollars in taxes one year, and then your property bill comes in the following year, and it's gone up. What just happened? Okay? Now, it's not necessarily that they raised your property taxes, but maybe at the prior year's election, who votes? Not very many people vote. Okay? But at the prior year election, the community went in and voted for a special assessment tax for XYZ Park. And you happen to live within the community assessment district. They call them all sorts of different things. Community facilities district. You'll also hear them called community assessment districts, and you'll hear them called CASs and a whole bunch of other things. But now all of a sudden you'll look at your property tax bill and you'll be saying, sometimes it's not a lot of money, $3.75, and you'll see a little thing on there and it'll say, ABC, Measures M, Passage, Park Improvement or something like that. Or Street Lamp Improvement or something like that. So you need to know, and by the way, where do you find these things? Preliminary title reports? Okay, that's where you're going to find them. Be careful, Melrose sometimes can be sneaky. So, spend a little bit of time on the Melrose, but it is important to know because, frankly, we are selling property in Southern California. Many of the newer developments have Melrose. Okay, frankly, most of Orange County. It's hard to find a house in Orange County that doesn't have Melrose.
So after the bond is paid, the community
Taxes go away.
just, okay.
Taxes go away.
Is that just for the first buyer, or if you sell within?
Till
Just
the
depends
bonds
on
are
the
paid.
time, yeah.
So till the bonds are paid. So if those bonds go on for 20 years, I've only owned it for 10, I now sell it to you. Well, you're making those payments for the next 10 years.
Until it's paid off.
Till they're paid off. Okay, so moral of the story is know what you're selling. It's important, okay? And as the listing agent, don't embarrass yourself by taking a listing and then not being able to answer the question, is your listing in a Melrose district? Find out. It's easy. It takes a minute. Call your title company. Go online. Get the stuff. Do your job. Okay, know what you're doing. Now, I can say the same thing. I'm going to speak a little bit less on homeowners associations, but the same thing generally applies. You've got homeowners associations and covenants, conditions, and restrictions. If you have a property that you're listing or writing an offer on that is in a homeowners association, you will always have associated with it covenants and conditions and restrictions. Okay? Can you have CC&Rs, again, CC&Rs, covenants, conditions, and restrictions. Can you have CC&Rs on a property but not be in a homeowners association?
Yes.
Yes, you can. Okay? So, you need to be aware of that. And again, if you are selling a property in a neighborhood and you are not familiar with what's going on, now the easy one is, hey, I'm listing your house. I mean, it's on the form. Do you live in a homeowners association? Now, you should know already. But there are some pockets of homes. We happen to manage a couple of those pockets, Vista del Verde, for example, that you could have been in this town for a very, very long time. And you could be what I would call a real estate professional in this town. And you might, there's 104 homes in this little group, and you might have never sold anything over there. And the next thing you know, you have a listing or buyer, and you're selling in there, and you've now just sold a house, which does not look like it's in a homeowners association, but it is. Okay? But if you were to make that type of a mistake, what I would also suggest is you are not reading it's not on there, you're not reading the preliminary title report. Because you have to, if you make the mistake on the listing, or if you make the mistake writing an offer or getting into escrow, one of the things, there's a couple of things that we need to read once we go into escrow. Hopefully in some cases you will have had this information prior. But let's suppose we got blindsided and we took a listing and we didn't realize that there was a small $40 homeowners association fee attached. Seller never mentioned it to us and we didn't know. Or the same thing, we're representing a buyer. We don't think there's an association here. We need to read, number one, escrow instructions, which will not reference a homeowners association unless they're told about it. Okay? But that's a whole other conversation. yes, ladies and gentlemen, let's read the escrow instructions. Let's make sure the escrow instructions accurately reflect what the buyer and seller have agreed to. Yes,
Would that show up on the,
prelim.
yeah, on the prelim, but the other thing, property profile?
It may.
May.
It may.
Yeah,
Can't
Which,
rely
that,
on
that,
it,
well, you
though.
can't rely on it, so if it may,
Exactly.
then don't trust that.
right.
Where you're going to find it is on the preliminary title report. Now,
Mhm.
where you have to be careful on the preliminary title report, this is why I asked the question earlier, can you have CC&Rs on a property and have that property not be an association? Yes, you can, okay? So when you get the preliminary title report, all CC&Rs, all of them, 100% without exception, of the covenants, conditions, and restrictions are recorded against the property. They're public record. So when you pull a prelim, it will be listed. Item number 6, covenants, conditions, restrictions, recorded on September 10th, 1965. Okay, now you have to be careful because that doesn't automatically mean it's an association. All it says is that they're there. Now sometimes the way it's written on the prelim, it's obvious. It'll say covenants and conditions and restrictions recorded against the property in the name of Vista Del Verde Homeowners Association. Ding, 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 ding.
Mhm.
But sometimes it doesn't always say that. Sometimes it'll just say covenants, conditions, restrictions recorded on behalf of Lang Homes or the builder or something like that. It's like, oh, okay. So what's the next step? My prelim says what? I have CC&Rs. Does that have the copy of the CC&Rs? This is a 2-inch thick piece of paper, by the way, or 100, 200 sheets of paper. It doesn't have a copy. So now you have to say, aha, we have CC&Rs. Can I get a copy of those? Sure. Now they email them over to you. Now you got to read them. Now the reality is you don't necessarily have to read all 200 pages, although it would be certainly nice if you were familiar with it. But if you read the first couple of pages, it will then identify whether these are just blanket CC&Rs that affect the property of the neighborhood, or whether those CC&Rs are somehow attached to a homeowners association. Okay, so the buyers and sellers have, and you cannot always rely upon your seller in disclosing that information. By the way, they are completely responsible for disclosing it. Okay, but that doesn't necessarily get you off the hook. So if your seller just kind of chooses to, let's just kind of avoid it. And I got to tell you, this happens. We manage 3 homeowners associations in Moreno Valley. 2 of them are condos. That's kind of hard to buy a condo and not realize there's an association, but one of them is a single-family residence. We at least once a year, 1 unit is sold in there. The buyer of that property, the first time they realize there's a homeowners association is when they get a letter in the mail from me that says, I think you just bought this house. You might want to call me because I manage the association and we got to talk money. Now they're, what? My agent, the seller, nobody said. And my response to them is, I'm sorry. The dues are X amount of dollars a month. Oh, and by the way, you got a little bit of an issue with some back dues that didn't seem to get resolved. Now they want to blame who? They want to blame their agent, which they should. They maybe want to blame the escrow company, which they shouldn't. Escrow company is not the escrow company's responsibility to go out and find if the property's in a homeowners association. They might want to blame the title company, but do buyers even understand what that is? They don't understand it. Okay, and you're going to have a hard time blaming the title company because on the preliminary title report, which the buyer signed, what did it say? Number 7, property is subject to CC&Rs, which they're supposed to read prior to close of escrow. So, anyway, do your jobs. These things scare me, which by the way, we've had 3, 4, probably 5 lawsuits revolving around buyers purchasing homes within homeowners associations. They didn't know it in the last 20 years. Revolving out of our agents within our office that didn't handle it as well as they should have. By the way, if you guys have any questions, stop me. Okay, we're going to get a little bit quicker through the rest of this form. Legal action. Again, what are we talking about here? This is the statewide advisory. This is just a big smorgasbord of things that the buyers and sellers need to keep an eye out for. Okay? Legal action. Buyers and sellers are advised that if the seller or a previous owner has involved in legal action, litigation or arbitration affecting the property, buyers should obtain and review public and other available records regarding legal action to determine basically how that affects them. Which, by the way, if the seller is involved in any sort of litigation, it has to be disclosed. I've sold the house. Mark and I are in escrow. I'm the seller. He's the buyer. He's flaking out. I cancel. I want to sell to Griselda. Mark might still want the house. I think the deal's done. He doesn't. Is that a problem for me? Maybe. Maybe. We don't want to get an escrow and then find out he doesn't think he's finished. Liz pendants, anyone? Okay, going back to our real estate licensing days. Okay, so all of that has to be, and again, we are not in a position to give any sort of legal advice other than to say consult your attorney. Community enhancement, private transfer fees. We talked about the private transfer fees a little bit, I think, at the last meeting. Okay, but again, buyers and sellers advise that some areas and communities have enhancement fees for user types. You're paying for the equestrian center. You're paying for the light poles. You also may have a private transfer fee. I'm not going to review that again because we talked about it in length last week. But just briefly, those are those transfer fees that you just have to pay. When the builder recorded a transfer fee, anytime the property is sold, a transfer fee has to be paid in addition. Some people, this also could, refer to like homeowners association. Some homeowners association have transfer fees. You need to be aware of what those are, and more importantly, who's paying for them. Okay, have you negotiated that out in the transaction or not? General recall, defective products. We haven't had this in a while, but one of the ones that was very, very common in this area, we had some bad heaters that were installed back 25 years ago. And these were attic installed heaters, and they were bad, called Knox rods. Don't ask me to explain what that is, but if you owned a property and you have one of those heaters, even though the heater might have worked perfectly fine, it was under recall. Okay? A lot of people went through the recall process, got their heater replaced. A lot of people didn't. They didn't get the memo in the mail that they had a bad heater. Okay? Now what happens? Now you're selling that house, a home inspector comes out, home inspector says, your furnace is no good up in the attic. Seller's like, what are you talking about? It works fine. Turn it on. See? House is warm. Nope. Got to be replaced. $4,000, whatever it happens to be. So, got to be prepared. And it's not just that. They've got some specific brands, the Whirlpool microwave hood combination. There's all sorts of things like that. That again, we're the real estate professionals. These are the type of things that we need to know or get prepared to defend in a lawsuit. Rental and property restrictions. This is, your typical rent restrictions. We don't have any rent restrictions in our localities for the most part, but if you go to Santa Monica, there's rent control and all the rest of that sort of stuff. Having said that, some properties that are sold, even within this city, or that are sold maybe with some sort of special community redevelopment funds or something like that, well, those have restrictions on them. So if you bought a property through the redevelopment agency, and part of the thing was that is, well, hey, you have to rent to low to moderate income, whatever it happens to be. Your rent can't be this amount. Sometimes they even have sales price restrictions. If I want to sell the property, you can't sell it for a certain price. What do you mean? I could sell it to this buyer for $300,000. No, you can't. You can only sell it for $250,000. What? There's all sorts of crazy stuff out there. Believe me, you will encounter those. So you need to know about the rental restrictions. Land leases. This is very typical if you're selling mobile homes. Okay, if you're selling mobile homes, you better know, is the property on a land lease? You own the mobile home, you don't own the land. You're paying a lease on the land, so you got to know that. That's a big deal. Home warranties. I hate the word warranty. We use it all the time. There it is in big bold print. When we use home warranty, I would prefer you use home protection plan. It's kind of somatic. But you got to remember, home warranty to me implies something different than a home protection plan is. Okay? They don't guarantee this stuff for life. They don't guarantee everything. There's deductibles and all the rest of that. But this is advising the buyer and seller. The seller as well. This is not a bad idea. Okay? We all should be fans of home protection plans. They are cheap insurance. Cheap insurance. And I'm not a fan of insurance. I don't like paying insurance. Of course, until you need it. Okay? But on these type of transactions, a home warranty is very valuable, and I highly recommend that we advise our buyers and sellers to obtain those. Internet advertising, blogs, social media. This is basically telling buyers and sellers that in the marketing of your real house for sale, we are going to use this type of advertising. You may think, what's the big deal? Well, somebody used this type of advertising, subsequently some wacko on the internet now has pictures of the entire house, and they realized that, you know, boy, that's a really, if I was to break into this house, that's the sliding glass door, and you know, the agent took video, oh, they got a picture of the jewelry box, and I was, or worse, you know, little Johnny's in the back, and you got a whack, oh, boy, look at little Johnny, okay? I mean, terrible things happen. So this is the world we live in. So now we have to have a new disclosure to our buyers and sellers that say, we're sorry that we put your property on the internet. We hope we haven't exposed you to some sort of terrible wacko in the future. Now, when this first came out, we were going out on presentations, and you literally kind of had to ask your seller, okay, do you not want your property on the internet? And I think for a brief period of time, I think there were 2 people that said, okay, I don't want my property on the internet. Okay, now what? I mean, everybody wants your property on there. But be smart when you're doing that sort of stuff. If you're doing a virtual tour, or if you're doing that type of information, you know, don't get the kids in the pictures. Don't pan into the bedroom with the jewelry box laying out there. Or do it, hey, oh, and by the way, they have a beautiful floor safe here in the master bedroom. You know, oh yeah, exactly. So be careful with stuff like that. Use common sense. Escrow funds. This is basically just kind of talks about what escrow funds are, how they are handled, what should they be certified checks, you know, should the money be wired, escrow, you know, should they be personal checks. Really, personal checks are fine, by the way. There's nothing wrong with a buyer giving escrow company a personal check for a deposit, as long as you've got a 30-day escrow and you're giving it to them on day 2 or 3. Okay, that's okay. Certainly don't have your, you know, hey, you're closing escrow on Friday. Tomorrow we're closing escrow. You need to come in with the balance of your down payment and closing costs, and the seller or the buyer comes in with the personal check for $32,000. Oh, no. Ideally, and frankly, this also is becoming more and more acceptable. 10 years ago, to ask a buyer to wire funds into an escrow account, you might as well have asked him to walk on the moon. You know, I mean, what? Wire? I'm just a little guy here. I'm not a bank. I don't know how to wire. Well, now, a lot of people do online banking. Pretty simple. You know, you get the information, you plug it in. It is the safest way to send money. Okay, and you don't have to worry about holds. It's a good there's a thing here, good funds. You have this good funds. You need good funds. Personal checks are not considered good funds until they clear. Which certainly, if you give a personal check, we're not closing escrow tomorrow. Escrow's not closing tomorrow because those funds will not be deemed good. Okay. Supplemental property tax bill. I like this one. You notice it's just nice. Big, well, I guess it's the same font as this. It just seems like it jumps out actually a little bit bigger. Okay. You're going to get a supplemental property tax bill. This is very important. I own the house. I've owned it for 20 years. I'm selling it. Griselda is my agent. She pulls up a property profile. She pulls up a prelim. It says Lance's property taxes are $1,500 a year. Okay. Robert's representing Mark, who's the buyer, and you guys are also pulling up a property, a prelim. You get a copy of the prelim, and you get a copy of a profile, and you see that the property taxes are $1,500 a year. Well, I bought the property 20 years ago, and I paid $150,000 for it. You're paying for it today. Your sales price is $350,000 or whatever it happened, or maybe less, who knows. But let's just say it's more, okay? When you buy that property, and again, people don't understand this. They see a prelim and it says property taxes are $1,500. Their expectation is, oh, I guess my property taxes, honey, our property taxes are $1,500. No, they're not. Your property tax is $3,500 or $4,000. The property is reassessed. Now that may sound elementary to you and I. I did a buyer seminar. I'm digressing from the disclosure. But guys, do not assume your buyers and sellers understand how our business works. Even the most basic, you're like, my God, you're 50 years old. How could you, and you've sold 2 or 3 houses. How could you not know this? I had a seller at a buyer seminar, buyer's workshop that was done 2 weeks ago over in Rialto. And a guy comes up to me after the fact. Most of the room was filled with buyers. This guy was a seller. Okay? No, I take it back. He was a buyer. Apologize. He was a buyer. He's coming up to me. And I'm, say, hey, you need to talk to Chase. Chase was sponsoring the seminar. You need to talk to Chase. They're a good resource to get you qualified, yada, yada, and all the rest of that sort of stuff. And the guy turns to me and says, yeah, I think I got the down payment. I think I got enough money. And they did Chase did a presentation, what it would cost. But yeah, you're telling me that you will refer me to an agent in your office to help me. I don't know. I don't think I can afford you. This is the buyer telling me, I don't think I can afford to work with a realtor. Is that a misunderstanding of our process?
Yes.
But when you step back for a minute, can you kind of understand how a consumer could think? I've never I've never bought a house before. You mean you're going to work with me? You're going to drag me around for a month? I don't have to pay you? I mean, that's a kind of a foreign concept to just generally speaking. Well, the guy literally didn't understand that. So I'm like, oh gosh, he could have walked right out of that room and said, I just can't work with a realtor because I can't afford him. Which is, again, I think also in part why a lot of people work with their family members. I really think that's part of the process. They think, oh, heck, I'll go with Joe because it's my brother. And, I don't have to pay him. If I work with Robert, I'm going to have to write Robert a check. What do you charge an hour? Do I have to pay every week? Do I have to pay at the end of the day when we're done writing him? So those type of things. So something as simple as that, you think they might get a little confused on something a little more complex as this? You need to educate your buyers. They need to understand. You never want a buyer coming back to you after the fact saying, I thought my property taxes were going to be $1,500. Ooh, that wasn't explained to you? Bad stuff. Non-confidential offers. This basically says that the listing agent may disclose the existence of terms and conditions of the buyer's offer. We don't do that. As a general practice, I don't like this. This is new. This only came in a little while longer. But you are now allowed to I have agents call me all the time. Hey, there's 10 offers on the property. Hey, let's tell me what the best one is. Yeah. No. But you can. It says here that you are allowed to. I know it says that, but we don't do that. Because if I did it, I'd have to do it for everybody. Now I got to call you. All of you guys have written offers on my listing on Main Street. I've decided to be non-confidential. I tell Griselda, okay, yeah, this is what's going on. Oops. Michael, this is what, Robert, I got to call everybody and tell everybody. Now you come back with a different offer, which is better, because now you have information. Now what do I got to do? Okay, wait, we got to change. Wait. It's never ending. It's ridiculous, right? That's why most offers are held in confidence by the professional, in my opinion. If you are representing the seller and you are the listing agent, obviously, you keep those offers in confidence. Okay. FIRPTA, that's the California Withholding Act. That is the foreign, I'm drawing blank. Foreign investment, blah 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 blah. Where is it? It says it in here somewhere. Help me out here. What's the acronym for FIRPTA? Goodness gracious. Anyway, we're going to come back to it. Anyway, bottom line, sellers have to fill out the FIRPTA, or they have to fill out a qualified substitute for the FIRPTA. All they have to do is fill it out, provide their social security number, or give it to escrow, providing their social security number. If they do not do that, buyer could be responsible to pay a withholding tax of 10% of the purchase price. You got to fill out the FIRPTA. No ticket, no wash. No FIRPTA, no close. You have to have that done. No ifs, ands, or buts.
Foreign investment in real property.
There we go. There we go. Foreign investment in real property tax. Okay? Liquidated damages. We're going to spend a little bit of time on this. Having said that, we spend a lot of time on the liquidated damages clause when we're reviewing the real estate purchase agreement. Real estate purchase agreement has liquidated damages in it. You need to know about it. We've covered that in a different class, but the liquidated damages clause is simple. In the event the buyer is in breach of contract, cancels the transaction for a reason that is not identified in the contract, they're in breach. It's not because of an inspection, or it's not because of a contingency for an appraisal or something like that. If the buyer is in breach and they've initialed liquidated damages as part of the contract, the buyer's earnest money deposit is automatically let me take back the word automatically. It is agreed that the buyer's deposit shall be forfeited to the seller in amount not to exceed 3% of the purchase price or the actual deposit amount. So let me give you an example. Let's just say we have a $100,000 purchase price and we have a $1,000 deposit. The buyer and seller have agreed that the deposit is $1,000. Well, $1,000 is less than 3% of the purchase price. So if that buyer backs out, the seller only has claim to the $1,000. Let's suppose that the deposit is $5,000 on our $100,000 purchase price. The buyer again backs out for no good reason. How much money can the seller latch onto of the $5,000? All of it? $3,000. Cannot exceed 3% of the actual sales price. That's why on most transactions, if I'm representing a buyer or a seller for that matter, I like earnest money deposits that are about 3% of the purchase price. Cement. It's a good number. Okay. So we talk more about liquidated damages in the contract. We also talk more about mediation and arbitration in the contract. So I'm not going to in the contract list. I'm not going to go over that too much. I got to tell you, I've been through multiple mediation arbitrations. Nobody's ever happy. I guess they consider that success. When you go through mediation arbitration and the buyer and the seller both think they got a bad deal, the mediator or the arbitrator would say, we've achieved bliss. Because that's how it works. Nobody's happy with mediation arbitration. Keep in mind, if the buyers and sellers agree in the contract to mediation arbitration, they got to mediate and arbitrate before they sue each other. Megan's Law database. Okay, again, we talk about this in another disclosure, but this is one reason I like doing this form, because it really covers so many areas. Megan's Law is the registered sex offender database. Okay, we've done this in a classroom. I don't think I've done it lately, so this is as good as any place. Again, you gotta love Google. You go in and you Google Megan's Law. These are advertisements. This is the one we want. meganslaw.ca.gov. Okay, that is the site. So we're going to go there. Now again, I don't go to these sites on specific properties. Okay. However, if I do go to the site for a specific property and then I have knowledge, well, guess what? Now I have the duty to disclose. Even if I don't go to the site and then I have knowledge, I have duty to disclose. So I got to go down here. I thought there was a box I had to check that said I read the disclosures. So let's continue. Yep, there's my box. Basically, and then there's also, I won't go, you can go through and take a look at the shelf. Has anybody ever been to Megan's Law site? Okay. Pretty simple. You can search by a bunch of things. If you know that, and again, by the way, if you have a buyer, and I've had this happen before, if you have a buyer that specifically says, Nance, please don't show me anything that's within a half mile of a registered sex offender. Well, first of all, that's hard to do.
Yeah.
Because they're everywhere. Okay? Everywhere. But they could also say, hey, I'm running. I'm running from John Smith. And when they say they're running, they're just saying, hey, John Smith molested my child 5 years ago. Last I checked, and believe me, do those people check this stuff all the time? Darn straight they check it all the time. Okay, you can type in a name, you can type in John Smith, you can type in a specific address, a city, a zip code, whatever it happens to be. We'll plug in my address, my home address. I live in an okay neighborhood. 5645. Yes, sir, Riverside. And again, I think I said, my client said I didn't want to live within. Actually, you don't get the option of a half mile.
California.
Oops. Okay, let's just leave it at the default. The default's 1 mile. So I'm going to search that. It's going to put my house in the middle. And look at that. That's new. That's new. I did this a month or two in this class. This guy, literally, I'm in my backyard, I pick up a rock, I throw it over 2 fences, and I hit that guy's house. So let's check out who this pervert is. Hit the little blue button. Look at that. By the way, all these people are a bunch of old white guys. I don't know what it is about old white guys, but there's something wrong with these guys. Okay, so who is it? Steve Lackey, or Eric Lackey.
Eric Lackey.
Okay? And again, they all say terrible things. Lewd and lascivious acts with a child under the age of 14 years old. Okay? So now again, if I was working with that buyer and my buyer specifically instructed me, Lance, I don't want to live within a half mile. Well, this is not, this is like feet. And I got to say, that wasn't there. That wasn't. I used to search his database all the time because I was convinced that the guy that used to live next door to me was a nut. And every time I'd search and it didn't show up, I thought, okay. But again, we got another one. That's probably less than a half a mile. The little blue dots, by the way, is what we're looking for.
Yeah.
Now, I got to tell you, it's not uncommon to do this exact same search and find, you know, that is hilarious. That is the first African American man. I think that's an African American guy. That is the first black guy I have done this dozens of times. I have pulled up hundreds of people, and I've always been able to tell the old white guy joke. It's the first time I've ever seen a black guy on this list. And again, terrible kidnapping with intent to rape. Okay. So, but at any rate, I will tell you another thing that's a little unusual. Normally, when you do a half-mile search, you at least have 10. At least 10, 15 blue dots. So, be careful. When I say be careful, let me rephrase that. Just, you need, if you have a client who's interested, this is my saying. Griselda, if you have concerns about this, this is where you go. In fact, it has the website on here, doesn't it? Where is it? There it is, right here. Go to the website, check it out. Okay? Check it out. Death of the property. We talked about this already. In the last week, we already went through the death, the 3 years. We talked about the HIV and disclosures and all the rest. I'm not going to go through that again. If you have additional addendum, you put them in here, and I think we're at the end of our form. Everybody signs, everybody's happy. Okay? So there you go. There's our 11-page statewide buyer and seller's advisory. Now, I'm telling you, a lot of agents aren't using this. Okay? You need to use this. If for no other reason, this 11-page form, if you're doing your job properly, this generates a good discussion with your buyer or seller. And you don't have to necessarily go through it the way I went through, but let's pretend I'm the listing agent, and I just go through and I just hey, Mr. or Mrs. Smith, anybody died in the last 3 years of the property? I didn't know. Anything terrible happened? No. Are you aware? And again, by the way, if they have knowledge, they have to disclose it. I'm asking myself, are you aware of any registered sex? No, I don't think so. Okay, well then fine, fair enough. You can just go through, use it as a crutch. Are you prepared to mediate arbitrate? No, I'll never do it again. Okay, that's a piece of information that you want to know. Your seller's had a bad experience. Talk about liquidated damage. You can talk about withholding. You can talk about internet. Are you okay with internet advertising? Oh no, I've had a bad experience. Someone broke into my neighbor's house and they had their house on the MLS with pictures. Now you know. On warranty, the rental restrictions, you may not know that. Why was anybody suing you? You know, if you file bankruptcy or something like that. These are great prompts to, number one, help you remember what questions to ask and jar memories out of yourself. Is the property in a homeowners association? Are there covenants, conditions, restrictions? Whatever it happens to be. So go through this with your client. Don't do what is done so typically, and that is you send it to them an email or you leave it at the listing presentation and say, I'll pick it up tomorrow. Or email it back to me. I've done it. And I'm not saying that's not best practice. Best practice is to sit down with them and do it. But if that's how you get your paperwork back, because maybe proximity dictates that, hey, you're emailing it to them because they live out of state. Well, when you get an opportunity to get it, hey, let's go over it together. Let's take 45 minutes. Let's just go through it page by page. Let's have a little dialogue. You get it in front of me, I'll get it in front of me, and let's go through it. Explain this to them. Okay, so there is our buyers and sellers advisory. We actually do a termite report class. We do a whole class on termite reports and disclosures, so we won't do that today. The earthquake booklet. Remember, the earthquake booklet has a little sign on it that says you've given the, which also, this is actually kind of a double. This goes
Yeah.
hand in hand with the, where is it? Where's the natural hazard disclosure deal?
And
This,
it-
this kind of goes up in here, okay? So, an earthquake booklet has all that, it talks about the lead-based paint in there, talks about radon, talks about mold, talks about all that sort of stuff, so make sure we're doing that. We went through the agency form already, let's do the avid. Then let's go through and take a look at an avid. Is the avid required by law?
No.
No. We want it in this office though.
This is one up, though.
Well, because it's, what is required by law? Real estate transfer disclosure statement, okay? Real estate transfer disclosure statement is required. The avid is basically a supplement to the real estate transfer disclosure statement. What happened, and we talked about this in prior classes, as a matter of fact, we talked about this when we went through the real estate transfer disclosure statement, the agents were not filling anything out. Buyer to inspect, buyer to satisfy themselves, performed inspection, saw nothing. Okay, well, when you saw nothing, the place is falling down. How could you see nothing? Or, again, you do. I was notorious for, I did a visual inspection of the property appeared to show normal wear and tear. Lance Martin recommends that the buyer obtain an independent third-party inspection to satisfy themselves as to any concerns. Right? Sounds pretty good, huh?
Yeah.
Did I really do an inspection? They don't want that. They want Lance to say, you can say all that, by the way. And by the way, it already says that in the contract somewhere else, right? They want Lance to say, there's a hole in the wall. They don't want Lance to say, go get an inspector to tell you there's a hole in the wall. We have a duty to do, oops, I'm supposed to call my son. I didn't. That's weird. Oops, forgotten step check. So, anyway, we have a duty to do a visual inspection. I'm hoping, finally. Okay, so let's do it. So let's go through. Most of you, I'm assuming, have already seen this. Again, this goes hand in hand with the real estate transfer disclosure, but this is our opportunity to do our visual inspection. Now again, it is a visual inspection. We're held to that standard. We cannot see through walls. It does not require us to crawl up in the attic. It does not require us to crawl into the house. It's a limit with California law with limited exceptions that a real estate broker and salesperson, collectively called agent, conduct a reasonable, competent, diligent visual inspection. Normally accessible areas. Okay? California does not require us areas that are not reasonably and normally accessible. We're not expected. I am physically capable of going in the attic. They don't expect me to go in the attic. Okay? Areas off-site of the property. I don't even know what that would be. Areas off-site of the property. Can't come up with an example. They don't expect us to, we talked about this previously, we are not, I don't know about this patio color. Okay? We're not the inspector. We are not expected to check public records or permits. Sure.
Areas off-site, maybe if there's a, what do you call it, where they go down to the pool and clubhouse and,
That's exactly what it is.
yeah.
Thank you.
Uh-huh.
That is, I live in Sunnymead Ranch. Sunnymead Ranch has a community pool, a clubhouse, tennis courts. Well, the tennis courts don't look so good, Lance. They haven't been sealed in 5 years. Okay, sorry. Okay, but we're not expected to do permits. I have agents appear like, oh, I'm concerned about this. Well, we aren't required. Now, if you've got a suspicion, you put it in here. Back patio looks a little funky. Buyer to satisfy themselves. Buyer can go check records and permits. Oh, actually, here you go, Shirley. Common areas, planned developments, condominiums, stock walkers, stuff like that. Okay. So maybe there's also something else that we might consider off-site, which to me is kind of the same thing. I manage properties in Riverside, horse properties. Well, there's miles and miles of horse trails that are not on that property, but the owner has that, kind of like a condo kind of a thing. Well, okay, we didn't inspect all the trails. Trails don't look so good. Okay, so, again, what are we checking out? Well, actually, let's back up. Let's back up. It's important. Okay, we have limitations. Because the agent's duty is limited to conducting a reasonable, competent, diligent visual inspection of reasonably and normally accessible areas of the property being offered for sale, there are several things that the agent will not do. What follows is a non-exclusive list, it doesn't include everything, of examples of limitations on the scope of the agent's duties. Roof and attic. Agent will not climb onto the roof, go into the attic. Agent will not move or look under furniture, bookcases. I'm not going to. I had a house that I sold. Actually, I've had 2 houses that I've sold that have this exact same problem. One asked me why. There was a little carpet in front of the kitchen sink. You know, when you wash the dishes, a little carpet. And then another one, there was a little carpet upstairs in a master bedroom or in a bedroom. And seller moves out. Well, what happens when they move out? Those carpets seem to get picked up. I understood the one in the bath or in the bedroom. I never didn't understand the one in front of the kitchen sink. But someone had left a hot iron on, and you had the triangle with the iron burn in the carpet, and then an iron burn on the linoleum. Maybe they were ironing in the kitchen, and it fell over and landed face first, and it burned a hole. So they just threw carpet on. Seller didn't disclose that. Did they know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
They knew. That's a problem. They knew.
Probably forgot.
Okay. Now, as an agent, we don't have to pull the carpets out. We don't have to do that. So that's kind of what it's talking about here. Appliances and systems. Agents will not operate appliances or systems. So in other words, we don't have to flush every toilet. We don't have to turn. Now we normally do. I normally will flush a toilet. I'll turn on an air conditioning system. But again, turning on the air conditioner, does that mean it works? Turn it on. Okay. Yeah, it's cold. Turn it off. Oh, it's warm. Does that mean it works?
Yeah.
That means it's blowing. You know, the reason it feels cold is because it's 100 degrees and I got wind blowing past my hand. By the way, has anybody ever done this? Turn it on. Oh yeah, it's blowing. I feel it. Is it cold yet? Yeah.
Here it comes.
Sure, it's cold. When in the back of your mind you're thinking, I don't think that's cold enough. Is that a problem? Darn straight it's a problem. We just lied. I don't think it's blowing quite as cold as it should, but hell, I really want to close this deal tomorrow. Be careful. Size limitations, environmental hazards. We are not responsible nor held liable to inspect for. We spent a lot of time talking about our lovely mold. I was at a property, well, I was a little bit late this afternoon. I was inspecting a property over at Lakeview Sunday. Popcorn ceilings are notorious for what? Asbestos. Do they all have asbestos?
No.
How the heck do I know if it has asbestos? I don't. It's got a popcorn ceiling. Check it out. We're not responsible to check that stuff out. Off-property. Oh, what's this? Maybe this will help define it. By statute, agent is not to pull permits. Maybe that's what they're talking about.
Oh,
Or inspect public records. Agent will not guarantee views. We talked about that before. Or zoning. Identify the purpose of construction. We're not guaranteeing anything about schools. We don't know. How's the police department?
Yeah.
I don't know. Black and white cars. I don't know. Okay. Analysis of our duties. If for any items disclosed as a result of the agent's visual inspection or by others, agent will not provide an analysis or determine the cause or source of the disclosed matter, nor determine the cost. Has anybody ever read this before? Do we do this all the time? Why do we do this? Let's read this again. Analysis of agent disclosures. For any items disclosed as a result of my inspection or by other people's inspections, I will not provide an analysis of or determine the cause or the source of the disclosed matter, nor will I. So in other words, the carpet's a little wet over here. I'm pretty sure it's from the toilet behind here, and heck, $200. What did I just do? I analyzed, and I gave basically an estimate. Do we do that all the time? Yes.
Yet that could have been a slab leak.
Could have been anything, and it could cost a hell of a lot more than that.
Yeah.
Now, I've done that a million times. Be cautious. Not because we're trying to conceal and deceive, it's because we don't know. It might have just been, 2 hours earlier someone spilled a glass of water. Okay? Or it could be a slab leak, which is not a $200 fix from the toilet behind.
Even the dog.
Could have been the dog. So again, now we have
Blame
to
it
be
on the
reasonable
dog.
about this. You have to be reasonable about, and you're like, well, what happened? I don't know. I'm an idiot. I don't know. All right. Well, you can form an opinion, but be careful. Let's not become general contractors. Let's not stick our neck out, because now what happens if they rely upon your analysis? Oh, Lance just said it was that. It's going to could be a couple $100. Oh, you still want to close escrow tomorrow, right? Oh yeah. You think it's Lance? You're pretty sure it's only $200. Now you send somebody out there and it's $2,000 slab leak. Who gets to pay for that?
I had a buyer wanted to get out of the cost of a home inspection and says, oh, well, but you're doing an inspection, you've done an inspection, so that's good, It's kind of like,
That's
no.
right.
No, I'm
That's
not
right.
a
Well,
home inspector.
No.
But your timing of that is perfect, because this is the language that I paraphrase this, but this is what I used to put into my disclosures, which the state said is no longer any good. What this means to you, who are they talking to? They're talking to the buyer more so than the seller. An agent's inspection is not intended to take the place of any other type of inspection, nor is it a substitute for a full and complete disclosure by the seller,
Right.
regardless of what the agent inspection reveals or what the disclosures made by sellers. Blah 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 blah. Buyer should review any disclosures obtained from seller, obtain advice about and inspections of the property from other appropriate professionals. Review any findings of those professionals with the persons who prepared them. If buyer fails to do so, buyer is acting against the advice of the broker. The only thing I said differently is I used to say, get advice from other professionals and satisfy themselves as to the condition of the property. Okay? I love this. Okay? That was my disclosure. So, anyway, now we can't do it. Now we got to do the visual, and here we go. Write it down. Now again, I don't have a problem with this. I've been told, oh Lance, you're playing games. I'm okay with this. Living room carpet shows normal wear and tear. Paint shows normal wear and tear. You don't have to go through red wine stain, crayon stain, I don't know, stain. Okay? All right? You don't have to do that. Okay? Normal. Now again, carpet missing, carpet destroyed. You can be a little flowery, crayon marks all over walls. Just go through, do your thing. Now again, I also don't have a problem with, if the living room and the bathroom look the same, normal wear and tear. Normal wear and tear is above. I don't know. Now again, I've been told, again, I'm your broker, I'm responsible for this. Do a diligent inspection. Don't just whitewash it because you want to get it done in 30 seconds. Okay? But if it is normal wear and tear, you can write normal wear and tear. Now what's the problem with that?
What is normal wear and tear?
It's different to you than it is to me. It's very subjective. But hey, it's our inspection, not theirs. In my mind, it was normal wear and tear. Okay, what's wrong with the kitchen? Well, the appliances are missing. That's pretty obvious. Write it down. There's a leak under the kitchen sink. I'm not going to go through this. We could spend hours going through this. Write down what you see. Pretty simple stuff. Then we've got signature of associate broker. You're going to sign it here. This is the real estate broker firm who performed this inspection. So you're going to sign it. Your buyers and sellers sign. So this is your buyer's agent. The way this is set up. Seller agent's firm down here. Okay. I take that back. It's whoever it is. It could be the listing agent, it could be the buyer's agent. Now down here, we both get to sign. We get to sign each other's ads. Listing firm here, buying firm there. Okay? Fill it out. It's required agent visual inspection. Any questions? No questions? Okay. Now just to get off of that, I don't normally recommend that my sellers disclose cosmetic defects, but they can. Okay? A seller doesn't necessarily, like I said, wine stains, carpet stained. Okay? Chip in bathroom sink. Okay? Well, you might say, oh man, then do I put it down or not? Part of me says don't worry about it, but then what'll happen is you'll go into escrow and then you'll end up and the buyer will come in 2 days and say, no, nobody told me. Are you kidding me? That's been there for 30 years. It's cosmetic, give me a break. You know, there's a scratch in the baseboard, there's a little, you know, you get these all, as a matter of fact, we have one in the conference room, a little, not necessarily a hole, but we get this thing, right? We get this little thing right here. A nice little,
Dent.
Bam.
do buyers flip out over stuff like that? Ah, man. It's never going to be good enough. Let's just put it that way. Okay, so we did our agency disclosure, mandatory in this office, by the way, just to be clear, because I said earlier, it is not required by state of California / DRE. By the way, DRE doesn't require anything. DRE says whatever the state says is what we say. DRE does not say you will do this form, this form, this form. DRE enforces what the legislature says. Okay, legislature says you don't have to do an AVID, you have to do a transfer disclosure statement. In this office, we require AVID. Okay, and everybody else does pretty much as well. Buyer's inspection elections. We're going to put these two together. Buyer's inspection election is basically a nice little form that says, hey buyer, are you going to get these inspections or not? Okay, and it's going to list a whole bunch of stuff. I strongly recommend, let me rephrase that, require, it's on our form, that representing a buyer, if you're representing the seller, I don't care if you get this or not. You can't force the buyer's agent to fill this stuff out. It's nice to have it, but you can't force it. But if we represent the buyer, I want you to get the buyer's inspection elections form. You're going to check the inspections that they plan on getting, and they're going to sign it. Okay, and we're waiting for it to pop up. It's pretty straightforward. While we're waiting for it to pop up, what sort of inspections are we talking about? Septic inspection, roof inspection, chimney, well. I think it talks maybe about school districts,
Foundations,
foundations, slabs,
Anything
electrical, HVAC, all that sort of stuff. What inspections do buyers normally get? They'll normally get a professional home. If they're going to get inspections at all, they maybe want a home inspection, roof. Very few people get roof inspections, but they might.
Wood destroying pests.
Termite, wood destroying pest. Property has a septic, property has a well. For the most part, that's pretty much it. How many inspections do it hasn't pulled up? Robert obviously had. There's what?
31?
There's like 31. There's 31 different type of inspections on there. We normally are not. Normal buyers are. Here we go. Again, I apologize. I think I need to get this all preloaded so next time I do this class we don't have to tolerate this. While we're waiting for that to go away, here's a few: roof, pool, boundaries, lot size, foundation, slabs, permits. Oh, mold. We talked about mold. I'm going to get a mold inspection. Really? Who's going to do it? Who's going to do it?
They have your square footage inspection. What is that? I mean,
Well,
isn't that your appraisal?
It is, but you got to remember, you could have a surveyor or an engineer come out or somebody do. But normally, you're right. Normally, if buyers are questioning square footage, they rely upon the appraiser. We have always used, in the real estate industry for years, we've always used the appraisal kind of as our backstop. Are we taping houses? Who in this room is truly capable of taping the square footage of a house? Well, I am. And frankly, I think you guys are too. But do we really want to do that? We rely on the tax assessor. Tax assessor is normally kind of got a backstop by the appraiser. But this is where you got to be careful. Normally, again, I apologize. It's taking forever. Normally, you rely on you go into a house. You've been doing this a little while. 1,600 square feet. You kind of, not again. I'm not advocating this as best practice. But you feel it.
Like that, yeah.
Okay. I've sold houses about this size. 3 bedrooms, living room, family room, kitchen, single story, 1,600 square feet. Now again, we're not expected to. There we go. We're not expected to take that property, and we basically tell in the MLS, what do we put on there? That this information came from tax assessor. Okay, which many times is right. I mean, 95% of the time it's right. But now we walk into that same house, tax assessor says 1,600 square feet, and we're like, whoa, this doesn't feel like 1,600 square feet. This feels like 2,200 square feet. So then you start looking around, you start analyzing. Room addition, and you're like, wow, well, dang, this looks like where the room addition started, but it looks like it also was done really, really nice. Okay? That would be a best case scenario. Now you're talking to the seller, hey, what happened? What's going on? Oh yeah, I got permitted. Well, it doesn't show up on the tax rolls. Okay, well again, you got to figure that stuff out. But we sure as heck don't want to get in the habit of taping. Which, by the way, if we were going to tape measure this building, what do we do? Let's just pretend for a moment which it is. This building is a box. Pretty easy. Let's go back to our geometry days. Length times width, square footage, right? Okay, now let's face it, when you houses with angles and funnies and all of that makes it a lot more complicated, but this building is a box. What do we measure?
Outside?
Outside, corner to corner? Or do we go to the inside of the wall, corner to corner? Who says? Michael says outside. Who agrees?
If you said living space, I would think inside.
Mm-hmm.
Inside? I got 2 insides and an outside?
Inside.
3 insides? Anybody else want to go the majority's leaning inside? Stick with your position, Michael. Don't be saying outside. It's outside.
Outside.
It's outside.
It is outside. Okay.
Now think about it. How thick are these walls? These walls are 6-8 inches thick. And I got another one over there that's 6-8 inches thick. So let's just call that a foot. This building is 50 feet long. I'm losing some footage, right?
Yeah.
Living inside, this building is 6,000 square feet, by the way. If we measured on the inside, it's probably 5,700 feet. You're gonna lose some footage because I can't. Number one, I can't occupy this space in here.
Right.
I also, if you really wanted to do every room, can I occupy this space in here? No. So my actual living foot is much less. But again, we sell the whole thing.
Yeah.
Okay. So when we are, which by the way, when you do that, the appraisers measure, and shame on you guys, because shame on you guys who said inside, because you obviously have never met an appraiser at a house when they were taping it, because they always tape the outside. Always. You may catch them doing an inside measurement because they're trying to figure out this wall to that wall, and then if I was outside, but they always measure the outside. Okay, so what sort of inspections are we getting? Well, there you go. I've never had a buyer do a chimney inspection, ever. Never had them do a tree or arborist inspection. Had them do surveys, had them do soil, had them do septic. Never had a radon gas, never had formaldehyde, never had asbestos, never methane, never mold that I was aware of or permitted. How do you do a zoning inspection? Who even does that? What do you do? Well, normally, a zoning inspection or a government inspection is the buyer goes down to the city hall and checks it out. Okay, so basically they check what they're going to do and they sign off, right? I want this done on every single one. Every single one. And again, normally, or if they don't do this, I'm not going to pull up the next form because it's going to take 20 minutes to do so. You get the waiver. Same form, check the box, buyer's not going to get. By the way, you don't do both. Don't have them sign the waiver and then have them sign the other. Okay? They're either going to do none, you have them sign the waiver, or they're going to do 1 or 2 of the ones on the other list, or 31 of them. Okay? So you don't have to, I won't pull up that form just because it's taking so long for this to pull. Time is good. 25 minutes, we should be right on time. Okay, the DA. Represent more than one buyer or seller. I would like this to be filled out and on every single transaction. I don't care who you're representing, buyer or seller. But this is the very simple conversation to have. There we go. And again, it takes 20 minutes for it to pull up, but let's have the conversation. Buyer and seller signs this form. Mr. and Mrs. Seller. I'm a real estate professional. I sell a lot of houses in your neighborhood and your city. That's why you hired me, because I have a track record of selling properties. And and thank you for placing your confidence in me. Yada, yada, yada. One thing you need to understand by signing the buyer, the disclosure that I can represent more than one buyer or seller. It is a possibility during the period of time that I'm going to be marketing your house for sale that I may very well have another listing. I may even have another listing in your neighborhood which is identical model match to your house. I just want to make sure you don't have any problems with me representing more sellers. Well, of course not, Lance. I mean, I understand that. Yada, yada, yada. Okay, now, again, if you really want to go crazy with the rest of the conversation. Oh, and then I also want you to make sure you understand that, let's just give you a scenario. I list your house for $195,000, and for whatever reason, we're having a hard time selling it. 4 months later, I list your neighbor's house, which is an exact model match to yours, 4 doors down and across the street, for $195,000. In every way, shape, and form, their house is identical to your house. Identical. Okay? But I list their house and 2 days later I sell it. Don't be mad at me. It happens. Okay? Or I'm holding an open house on your house. Okay? And I happen to pull up a buyer that comes into your house. But that buyer ends up buying another house. And actually it's my listing, which is identical to yours, but they just like that one better. Are you okay with that? Now, to be honest with you, I don't know that I have that full, deep conversation with the seller, but the reality is that's really the conversation that you need to have. Have I done that, and have I had a seller upset with me because I sold? Lance, come on, you listed mine first. I know I did. And believe me, I would have loved to have sold yours because I didn't want to have to make hear this phone call right now. But the reality is the buyer decided that they wanted that other house instead of your house. Okay? So that's the logic behind having this conversation with your seller. I'm going to work with multiple sellers during this period of time. The same discussion you need to have with your buyers. I'm going to work with more than one buyer. Now again, where it gets a little sticky is now you have this 2 buyers who want the same house. Okay? Most buyers do not expect you to be their exclusive agent during the entire period of time, but they do expect you to represent their interest. And when you've now picked up another buyer who wants the same house, you just need to be prepared. You can't play favorites, I guess. Okay? Oh gosh, but this family is just so much nicer. And these people, I know I've been working with them for 2 months, but they're just kind of rude. Hey, they're your agent. You have a fiduciary duty. You have most honesty, integrity, care, and loyalty in all dealings with the buyer. If you can't do that, get rid of them. Give them to somebody else. Okay? So, when you're talking to your buyers, and again, we're waiting for the form to go across. When you're talking to your buyers, and you say, I'm going to represent more than one buyer, that doesn't mean you get to cherry pick. So if you have 2 buyers who happen to want the same house, is it possible that this could happen? It happens all the time. You need to be prepared to write offers for both of those buyers on the same house, which also puts you in a predicament. Okay? Right? Now we start to get into the dual agency thing, and can I actually do that? Or should I refer them? Let me refer these people over to Mark, and you have to have that conversation. Hey, I'm going to write another offer for Mr. and Mrs. Smith. I know we've been working on it. I know you want the same house. I'm going to have you work with Mark. That's fine. That may be a tough conversation to have, however, with the buyer. You may never have that buyer back again. How come you didn't choose me to write the offer with? How come you didn't refer those people over to Mark? Why am I the stepchild? How come I didn't get it? I don't need to write the offer. And is it problematic? It can be done, and it can be done honestly and ethically and legally and all the rest of that. But is it problematic to write 2 offers on the same property for 2 different buyers? Can be. Just as problematic as representing the buyer and seller in a dual agency situation. You got to make sure all of those cards are on the table. Make sure everybody's represented fairly. And nobody can come back to you at a later date and say, hey, you gave somebody an unfair advantage over the next person. So, with that, you need to have this form signed by your buyers and your sellers. and you need to have the conversation. Again, you need to explain. Remember that just 25, 30 minutes ago I was talking about this buyer wasn't sure he wanted to work with any of you because he wasn't sure how he was going to pay you. You need to have a conversation on how we do business, how we get paid. And by the way, you also need to have that conversation in the context, let's put this aside for a minute. You're working with a buyer, and you've worked with them for 2 weekends now, and you're showing them property. And everything's going along great. Okay? But you just assume that they understand how you do business. The conversation of conversations never come up. She says, oh, they must know. You need to, at some point, while you're walking through the house, and you got a little bit of time, hey, by the way, let me just clarify a couple of things. Let me explain to you how I do get paid. Well, we've spent 2 weekends together. Okay? My expectation is at some point, you and your family are going to buy a house. Okay? Just so you know, and we haven't talked about this, I get paid by the seller through close of escrow, out of seller's proceeds. You're never going to write me a check. However, just so you know, that doesn't mean that I can be showing you houses every day for the next 6 months. Because I'm not drawing a check. Coldwell Banker doesn't cut me a check every Friday. I'm 100% commission. Now you may think that's kind of a difficult conversation to have with your buyer. I got to tell you, it's liberating. And a lot of your buyers, it will be a turning point in your relationship, and a turning point for the better. They'll have a little more respect for your time, a little more understanding for how you're sitting. And a lot of them will say, really? Oh my God, I didn't realize this. I thought you got like a salary or something from the. I thought there was some commission involved.
Draw or something.
Yeah, you mean you've been working with me for 7 months every weekend, and you haven't gotten anything? Well, no. I'm hoping you're going to write an offer, and we're going to close because I won't get a dime for all of my efforts put in with you until it's time to close the escrow. Now again, I got to tell you, that is not as awkward of a conversation as you may think it is. And I'm telling you, it is liberating, and you will probably find the relationship with your buyer change dramatically. Now you tend to have those type of conversations with your seller fairly early on in the listing process, because when you're going through the compensation and the listing agreement, you go over it. This is what you're agreeing to. It's due and payable at close of escrow. You don't have to write me a check in advance. So when you get to that part, which by the way, the sooner, a lot of agents avoid talking commissions to the sellers. Oh, I want to save that for the end. I'm telling you, you might find it in your interest to bring it out early and educate them, because you may lose listings, and again, you may lose the listing because the seller did not understand that they don't have to cut you a check in advance. You never got to that point. So you're walking through the house. Oh, by the way, just so you understand, when we start talking compensation, I've had a lot of my sellers in the past that misunderstood how I get paid. You're never going to write me a check. You will never write me a check. I get paid if the successful close of escrow comes out of your seller's proceeds. If there are no seller's proceeds, I get paid out of the short sales proceeds that the bank agrees to. So I just want to put you at ease. If that's something that you're nervous about, you will never write me a check for my professional services. You're never going to write a check to escrow either, or title. Okay? It's all done through close of escrow. I got to tell you, I bet about 10 to 20% of your sellers will say, oh, thank you for telling me that. I was worried about that. I was nervous about how that worked. And instead of telling you that they were nervous, you might have just got one of these, okay, well, give me your card and I'll get back to you. Because they're embarrassed about it too. They're embarrassed. It's a tough conversation. Okay, so at any rate, I want this sign on everyone. I'm going to represent more than one buyer. I'm going to represent more than one seller. You can also have the very similar conversation when you start talking about on the agency form. That's also a good place to have that conversation. As a matter of fact, I would suggest when you're doing the DA, put that right behind the agency. Take care of your agency, go through it, explain the duties, buyers and sellers, fiduciary duty, utmost honesty, care, loyalty, and all dealings with buyer or seller. Oh, and by the way, you're not my only client. Let's do this one too. Okay, nice segue, same conversation. Okay, I'm not going to pull this one up, but I'm going to talk about it while I pull up the market condition advisory. So let's pull up the market condition, and then we'll talk about the for your protection, get a home inspection. Market condition advisory. I don't know that this form is always necessary. I love this form. While we're waiting the 50 minutes for it to pull up, let's talk about the for your protection, get a home inspection, the HID form. which I think is the home inspection disclosure.
Mhm.
Okay. The two things about the, for your protection, get a home inspection form. Number one, if you're doing an FHA transaction, it is required. Okay? Required. If you're writing it, if you're doing it in escrow, where the buyers get an FHA financing, you have to have it. Not only do you have to have it, that needs to be signed and dated the same day that the offer is signed and dated. So if you made a mistake and you wrote the offer today, and oh, I forgot, Lance said it was required on FHA deal. Well, let me send this over to the buyer, and a week later or 2 weeks later, and the dates don't jive. When the file goes to the underwriter at the lender, they will kick it out. They have to have it. It has to be dated the same day as the contract. Okay. Now the disclosure, the title is. That's why I'm not pulling up the form. The title of the form is the form. For your protection, get a home inspection. It's 1 page long. It tells all of the common sense reasons why the buyer would want to do that. Down at the bottom of the form, the buyer says, okay, I will, or I choose not to. Very simple. It's kind of like the buyer's inspection, which is why I wish we've got we've got the buyer's inspection thing and the waiver. Why can't we just have one form? Here it is. I choose to do it, or check the box, I choose not to. Why do I have to have a separate form for that? Anyway, the same thing with the home inspection waiver. But again, it's not required on anything other than FHA. But it's not a bad form to have. Plug it right in there. Have them say, you going to get a home inspection or not? Which, by the way, we always recommend to our buyers they get a home inspection. I don't care if the house was built 3 days ago. Do you have problems with new construction?
Yeah.
Of course. Has anybody ever bought and moved into a brand new house? Okay. Did you have some issues? Did it take a little while to have them come out and take care of it? Okay, maybe in the house is now 2 years old. Now in theory, most of those builder issues are probably taken care of, but that doesn't mean that you don't have issues. Get the, oh gosh, it looks so nice and new in the neighborhood, it's beautiful. You know, get an inspection. Oh, so I guess what I'm saying, don't ever let these words pass your lips. I've said these words and then I said, I'm going to take those back. Gosh, it really looks good, it's brand new, you did an inspection. I've said that to a client before. And then I said, so forget what I just said. I know it does look brand new, I don't know. Get an inspection anyway, because then you say, yeah, you never know. Okay? And you sure as heck don't want to be in a position where something happens and now the buyer's suing you, and the buyer can legitimately say, Lance told me I didn't need one. And now I have to testify. Did you say that, Lance? Yeah, I did. Honestly, I felt that way. I really didn't think they needed it. That was stupid of me. I mean, the house was new, it looked good, and I didn't think they needed it, and I was wrong. No, lesson learned. And then I'm going to write a check for $10,000 to my Arizona Mission Company. Okay, so it's not good.
So have that done before the house closes escrow.
It's not much good if you do it after.
I mean, how many days before you, or what do you?
Should be done during your inspection
It depends. It's in your inspection contingency period.
As soon as the house is built, though, I mean, as soon as it's up, then have it inspected.
You're talking brand new construction?
Brand new construction.
Well, prior to, okay, if you're buying, it's a little bit different deal. When you're buying brand new construction directly from the builder, normally you're not dealing with the realtor. You're dealing with the builder. The builder's going to say, okay, we're finished construction on this day and we're going to close immediately thereafter.
Right.
Okay, it's done. The house is done. I've gotten, which by the way, done means what? Done means occupancy permit from the city that the property is being built, and the builder says all of the other little niceties are done. You know, whatever else you agree, because you'll get an occupancy permit, but maybe they didn't finish the concrete work in the back that they promised they were going to do. Now the builder says it's done. You want to give yourself a window within the contract that says, okay, once you tell me it's done from that date forward. This is why with new construction nobody does this, because what do you do when you're buying? I've never bought a new house. I've seen both of my parents, no, both of my parents. My parents and my in-laws both bought brand new houses many, many years ago. So a couple of you guys have built, you probably will agree with this. It's exciting. You're going out all the time. Oh God, they did that. Look what they did. And you go out next weekend And then, oh, it's almost
This is
done.
not working.
And you're talking to the sales guy, when's it gonna be done? I think we're gonna be done next week. I can't wait, I wanna close, I wanna move in, I'm so excited, right? That's human nature, okay? Well, that might be, the excitement may be a problem, because now you haven't done your own inspection. Now, what you're depending upon, what most new home buyers are depending upon is, after close of escrow, when something goes wrong, you're gonna have a responsible builder who's gonna come in and make it right. All right, well, I don't know if you're gonna have a responsible builder or not. I don't know if they're gonna make it right or not. I know of lots of clients that will tell horror stories with builders after the fact. So whatever you build into your contract that says, once you tell me the property is completed, I want 14 days after that to have an independent third-party home inspector to come in and test it all out. And then you give a report, and then you provide that back to the builder, and you say, hey, I love it, the house is beautiful, I'm so excited, I really want to move in, but my home inspector said that you put all the windows in backwards.
So like they're saying that the house is gonna be finished September 20th, the buyers will have the keys on, at that date, so I can have the inspector go in before that.
Oh, you wouldn't necessarily have the keys, but you'd have, make arrangements with the builder to have access to the property for the inspector to do whatever they're going to do.
Okay. Because they are saying they are gonna have a 1-year warranty on anything in the house too. After
Or a
they move
10-year
in.
warranty. A lot of builders do 10-year warranty, depending on what it is. Are you buying a house right now?
No, my buyers aren't.
Oh, you're both? Okay, all right. So, but again, you gotta be, just be careful with, and again, a lot of the buyers, and again, my experience with my parents and my in-laws was they couldn't get in the home fast enough. Because again, if the builder says September 15th, you know what that means. That means like December 15th, maybe, right? Right? So I would just caution, if you're working with buyers in that situation, which you are, even though you're kind of the de facto agent, you've stepped back and 99% of their communication is now directly with the builder and probably whatever financing lender that they're associated with. But if you're still getting a piece of the pie, you still want to keep them as a long-term client, you might want to sit back and say, okay, let's just give ourselves a timeout. Let's get an inspector lined up who's prepared to come. Now, the builder's going to be thinking, well, that's just silly, that's a waste of money.
Right.
Why are you wasting your money? Because. How much is this house?
It's
I'm
$300,000.
spending $300,000. I can spend $350 on an inspection. Yeah, but it's all brand new. I get it. Okay? You
But
guys
these
make
are letting the
mistakes.
buyers know to do
Right.
it. And if
You
they don't
make
want to do it,
mistakes.
it's
They
okay.
did not even ask you about when
Right.
you were buying.
Silly things
Because we
happen.
bought it, one brand new, there was already built, but it was new.
Right.
And they not even asked us.
Silly
And
things
they
happen.
give you the home warranty,
Water's coming
so
out the
after
floor.
that, we are, requesting services.
Yep.
On the home warranty.
That's right. That's right. And silly things happen. The example I gave, the windows were installed backwards. I don't make these silly things up. I have houses that I've sold where an inspector, after the fact, came out and said, these windows are in backward. I'm like, I don't understand. There is a front and a back. Okay? I wouldn't have even known that. No, they're backwards. Okay? What's the big deal? Well, it is a big deal. The way the flashing and all the rest of it, this side was meant to face out. Well, now what do you do? Well, I'll tell you what we did. We disclosed it. Buyer said, it's okay to me. Okay. Silly, or, you go in, and you turn the hot water or the cold water on, hot water comes out.
Mhm.
Well, that's just a silly thing. It happens. The guy's got, something got crossed in the lines. Now, again, 99% of the time on stuff like that, the builder is gonna, no biggie. We'll send our guy out. We'll get it back, and everything's fine. But I always want to do it anyway. Always want to get that. Okay, market condition advisory. I don't know if it's up or not.
Yeah.
Well, it's up, but here we go. Okay, now I really liked this form when the market was tanking. Okay, because I like to be able to give this to my buyer, basically saying, hey. The history over the last several years as real estate values have been tanking. You decided to buy today. Just want to let you know, nobody has a crystal ball. Are they going to go up? Are they going to go down? Now, if you sold a house to a buyer between 2006, 7, 8, 9, 10, or 11, they were losing value, right? It's nice to have had this form signed. Now we got the opposite. We got all this appreciation going on. I like the form even better now, for two reasons. Number one, by the way, this is signed. This isn't just a buyer form. This is a buyer and seller form. I want to have my seller understand. I don't want my seller coming back to me 6 months or a year from now saying, "You son of a gun, you know what, if I had known property values were going to go up another 30%, I would have held on." Hey, I don't know. I don't know. Now, my gut right now, today, is telling me, based on all the information we're looking at and the people that I trust, that we're going to have a run-up. Now, 6 years ago, 7 years ago, my gut, based upon all the data, was telling me we were going to have a slide. Okay, we got that pretty good. Now, when Debbie and I sat down in 2006 and we talked about how long are we going to be sliding, I think we were talking 4 or 5 years. I might have even I have a memory of saying, this REO stuff will be done by 2010, 2011. We'll be back in a more normal market. Well, we sure as heck weren't done in 2010, 2011. There certainly was nothing normal that was going on. But I want to protect myself on both sides of this equation. My crystal ball doesn't work. If you're buying today because you think values are going to go up, okay, you get comfortable with that yourself. If you're selling today because you think values have peaked, or you just want to sell because you're done, fine, you make that decision yourself. We have to be very careful for making these predictions. Hey, you got to buy today because if you don't, you're going to miss the train. Agents are out all day right now saying that. You got to get in now. You're going to miss your opportunity. Or you better sell now before this. Or you better not sell now. That's a whole other thing. Now again, I don't know that a lot of listing agents will say this, but there are some agents who might say to a seller, because I just said this to a possible seller 2 days ago, well, you might want to hold on another year. Well, you think so? Yeah. If you don't have to sell, you might want to hang on another year, because I think it's a pretty good chance that your house is going to be worth a heck of a lot more. You've ridden out a lot of pain. Okay. Now again, what am I doing? Number one, I'm talking myself out of a possible listing in the commission. But at the same time, when I make a statement like that, what if I'm wrong? What if I'm wrong? Hey, Robert, don't sell today because I think it's going to be better a year from now. Okay, I'm the professional. I'm supposed to educate and give my opinions, right? Well, the world changes in the next 3 months. We're going to have a new Fed chief, apparently. Bernanke apparently is out. Looks like we're going to stop buying bonds. The government's been buying bonds. Interest rates may do what?
Going up.
May go up.
It went up last night, matter of fact.
Interest rates are going up. Stock market, something funky's happening. We have a terrorist attack. I mean, I don't know. Something changes, and now Robert turns, damn! I was ready to go, and you, Mr. Smart Guy, told me not to sell my house. Okay? Now again, there's a fine line between we're professionals and we're presenting data and we're providing. But again, don't think we're that smart. My crystal ball doesn't work. Okay? Come on. I'm not that smart. Values were going to go up 30. I sat in this room a year ago and said property values are going to go up 50%. I believed that. I don't know that I was telling all my clients that. I'm telling you guys that. I'm not that smart. I mean, heck, believe me, if I was that smart, I would have retired years ago. So at any rate, buyer's inspection advisory. Got to have it. We've pretty much, talked about it. This is also to offer. I'm just going to touch base on this really quickly. It's very common these days for us to advise our buyers to pay more than offer price, right, or more than asking price. You've got it. It takes a while for buyers to understand all that. Now sellers are getting greedy. Things are going crazy. Well, you just listed yesterday for 210. Yeah, I know, but I want 220 today. Why? I don't know, man. I think I can get it.
I saw it on the internet.
I saw it on the internet.
Prices are going up.
Okay, we've got 3 more. I'm not going to pull up the forms. You guys can pull them up yourself. We're going to take, it's time to stop. We're going to finish in 3-4 minutes because these are pretty easy. The VP form is verification of property condition. This is commonly known as our walkthrough form. Okay. If you look in the purchase contract, it's very clear that the final walkthrough and the execution and signing of the verification of property condition or walkthrough form is not a contingency or a requirement to close escrow. So in other words, if the buyer does the walkthrough fine. If they don't do the walkthrough, fine. As a general rule, especially when we are representing buyers, I want this. Okay, so when we represent the buyer, I want this. I would like it when we represent the seller. I would like you to collect that from the buyer's agent, but if you can't get it, that's fine. Sometimes you can't get it because the agent's a flake. Sometimes you can't get it because they haven't done it. Okay? But the walkthrough form is very simple. It basically says, I walked through the form, these are the things that are wrong with it, these are the things I want fixed, or I found things wrong with it and I'm satisfied, it's okay, or I haven't found anything wrong with it and I'm satisfied, it's okay. Obviously, what we all would like, buyers and sellers and agents alike, would like a nice, clean walkthrough form. Even if there's something on the form, that's okay. You know, we saw whatever. And by the way, most buyers, if you notice something, there was a pile of trash on the side of the house, but you know, whatever. You don't necessarily write it down, you just, whatever. Just let me sign the form, I'm happy with the condition. And I'm okay with that. You, however, on the buyer's agent side, let's suppose you've got a buyer who is grumbling over a bunch of trash that was left on the side of the house. Ah, that's okay. Well, you write on the form. You know, it looks like 2 truckloads of trash left outside the house. Buyers agreed to close escrow with accepting the removal of the trash. We'll have them sign it. Again, we're trying to avoid the after the fact. You told me it was okay. You said you were unhappy about it, but you said it was okay. Now we've closed escrow and you want me to pay $300 to get the trash removed. What? Does that happen? Yeah, it happens. So put the stuff on the form, okay? Now, I caution everybody in this room, we do not do final walkthroughs for our clients. We do not do final walkthroughs for our clients. Well, then they're coming in from out of state. You can go over, you can take a look at the house. Hey, do you want to close escrow and you're out of the country? I'll go over. It's not a final verification. The house hasn't burned down. Looks to me okay. But I'm not. What happens? You say everything's perfect, they close escrow. Now, the smallest thing on the planet is your fault. You said everything was fine. If you have a client, you just don't just say, hey, I'm going to take a look at it, but when you're going to put in there, buyer chooses to close escrow without final walkthrough verification, yada yada, accepts property in its current condition, yada yada yada. Okay, sign it off. Otherwise, you wait. Well, I'm not going to be back until Monday. That's fine. We'll close escrow Tuesday. Oh, we gotta close. In fact, the agents want to close, right? Because we want to get paid. Only good escrow is a closed escrow. Having said that, some closed escrows are not good escrows. Okay, so be careful with that. So, but as a general rule, if you are representing the buyer, do your final walkthrough. Ideally, the general rule, the contract says 5 days. 5 days prior to close of escrow. The normal rule has kind of normally been, 3 days prior to close. But again, you got to be careful, because if you haven't had this experience, you will. You do your walkthroughs 3 days prior to close, everything's fine. You close escrow, the buyer goes over there, and now you realize that the house is vacant or something, and there's been a flood or there's been a broken window. She said, well, 3 days ago was fine. Well, things happen in 3 days. Okay? So doing the final walkthrough 3 days prior is a good idea, especially if you're anticipating problems. If you've agreed, Debbie's agreed that the seller's going to fix things. Okay, well now hey, it's done. Okay, great. Let's go over there and done. Okay, that's good. But now letting the property sit vacant for 3 days, you normally want to get over there, the day before close of escrow, the morning of close of escrow. Because if there's a problem, you want to be able to put the brakes on. Stop! What do you mean stop? Yes, stop. Pull the recording. I've sent it down to I don't call them. It can happen. I'm going to pull you out of line. I'm going to pull that grant deed out. Recording's been pulled. Now, we don't like that. Gosh, I'm so close. Okay? But if you got a serious issue, house has been flooded, house has been vandalized,
Burnt down
house burned down last night. That stuff happens. I've never had one burned down. I've had plenty that have been seriously vandalized or just had like a plumbing leak that sprung a leak. Whose problem is that now? Buyer. Buyer's problem. Escrow's closed. What do? turn into your insurance company. Not a great way to move into a house. So do that final inspection and then do that final inspection. And that very well could be one of those things that you don't even necessarily talk to the buyer about. Buyer did their inspection on Tuesday or Wednesday. We're going to close on Friday. They live out in LA. We're scheduled to close Friday morning. So Thursday night, before you head home, you drive over there. Just make a look. Good, got it. Okay? And then you just pray nothing happens in that 12 hours, overnight. Or you go out Friday morning, okay? Which is probably even better. Okay, looks good. Okay, we're going to record this morning at 10. So if there was a problem, now you got a 2-hour window to call escrow and say, stop. And even sometimes at that, it's too late. The cell phone's not working and the this and the that. Just stop! Not too late. Okay? All right. The broker affiliated business services form, that is our form. That basically says if you are using Town and Country Escrow, or if you're using REO Asset Maintenance as part of your transaction, you're just disclosing to the buyer or the seller that Town and Country Escrow is owned by Pioneer Real Estate Incorporated. Pioneer Real Estate Incorporated owns Coldwell Banker Pioneer Real Estate, owns Coldwell Banker Town and Country Real Estate, owns Coldwell Banker Realty Center, owns Town and Country Escrow in Claremont, Covina, Marina Valley, Redlands, owns REO Asset Maintenance. So right hand, left hand. You want to do business with me, when you use my escrow, I get paid on that too. Are you okay with that? If you are, sign my affiliated business services form. If you're not, then let's just use a different escrow company. I'm okay with that. Or don't use my maintenance company. I'm okay with that. Okay? But you need to disclose what our relationships are with these other companies, yes.
Where's that form at? It's not on zip form.
It's not a zip form. That's our own personal
It's on
form.
our website?
Yeah, it's on our
okay.
website, and it's on our website.
Okay.
And we're going to have a new portal, which I think you guys are all going to love. It should be ready in about 30 days, and all those forms will be there.
Oh.
And that's an internal form. So you don't have to use it if you're not using. Most of you aren't using the maintenance company. I'm not so concerned about that. But if you're using our escrow, you have to use it. If you're using Summer at Town and Country, or Bernie, or Christina, or Walter, you have to use it. Okay, have to. No choice. We get in big trouble if you don't. And then last but not least on our checklist is the cooperating broker compensation. This is pretty rarely used. In a perfect world, this form should never need to be used. Again, I won't pull it up, but basically what this is all about is it should, if it is used, it should only be used as a confirmation of what the agreed upon commission is. Okay? So if in the MLS it says 3% commission is being offered to the buyer's agent, and you are the buyer's agent, quite honestly, that's enough. I don't as your broker, I don't need anything else. You print out a copy of the MLS, which, by the way, when you write that offer, good practice, write the offer, print out a copy of the form. It says the 3%. Now, we have safeguards now. In the old days, you couldn't always go through and see all those changes. Now you can. You can say, look at them. 3 days after that, they changed it from 3% to 2.5%. We have those safeguards now. It was 4 years ago or so, you didn't have that. I mean, it was a pain in the rear. But at any rate, if it says 3% in the MLS, and it said that at the time you wrote the offer, and the offer was accepted, you're good to go. What I find happening where most people are using this form is, and this is a violation of the MLS rules, by the way. Let's give a different example. The multiple listing service says that the commission is 2.5% to the buyer's agent. You are the buyer's agent. And you write an offer, and you agree to 2.5%. And then after the fact, you send out the cooperating broker, and you say, I want 3. That is a violation of the MLS rules. Now, let me give you a little different scenario. When you submit the offer, prior to acceptance, you also submit this form, and you say, I know you're offering 2.5% in the MLS, however, I want 3. That is also a violation of the MLS rules. Okay? So whether you ask for an increase in your commission before or after acceptance, this is the deal. Whatever it says in the MLS, is what you get paid. If you don't like it, don't show the house. Okay? Or if you're like, well, wait a minute, that's the house that my buyer wants. Well, then you need to have another difficult conversation with your buyer, and you have to say, okay, buyer,
Are you willing to pay
I
that?
finally found the house you want. This is the deal. This listing agent doesn't want to pay me. Remember that conversation that we had in the living room 4 months ago about how I get paid? Well, I finally found you the house. I work for X. This guy's paying significantly less than X. But it is the house you want. I need you to pay me. That's a tough one. Okay? Now, depending upon who your buyer is and the loyalty and their financial situation, that may or may not go over. The buyer may say, you're out. I'm going to go work directly with the listing agent. This is a problem that we've created for ourselves as an industry. But at the end of the day, whatever it says in the MLS is what you must agree to work for. Yes.
Except for a short sale, right?
Except for short sales, well, not necessarily except. But generally, the exception for short sales is there is a compensation model that's actually changed dramatically. I think maybe what you might be angling for is what used to be the case. And what used to be the case was, I'm going to offer you 3% and I'm going to take 3%, but if the bank comes back and says I'm only paying 5, that you agreed to for 2.5 and I agree to 2.5. Okay. We kind of fought for that for a while, and the buyer's agents, the listing agents kind of said, okay, we'll do that. But now the world's changed. Now the world's changed dramatically. And by the way, who normally controls this conversation? He or she who has the listing controls the conversation. It's your listing. You control how the compensation is split. Of course, with your seller's acknowledgement. Okay? But now what's happened is, frankly, this is the exact opposite. And this is not necessarily just for short sales, although this started out on short sales. Now it's bled through to every type of transaction. So the listing agents are saying, hey, I got myself a 6% commission. I'm taking 3.5 and you're getting 2.5, and tough noogies, short sale or otherwise. Okay? That is a result of our low inventory issues. If you have the listing, you're king or queen, and you just, to be honest with you, you get to kind of walk over all the buyer's agents. That's been going on for a very long time, at least for the last year. And for those of us that have been working with buyers, I can't believe I'm raising my hand. A year ago, I certainly wouldn't have. I'm working with a lot of buyers these days. One of the things that used to be beautiful about working with the buyers is you always at least got a 3% commission working on the buy side, and the listing agent was the one who was taking the hit, especially on the REOs. Listing agent got 2, 2.5, sometimes less than 2. The buyer's agent always got 3. Okay, but I got to tell you, as the market has changed again, now a lot of the listing agents are saying, I will use the word getting greedy. And they're saying, I'm going to keep 4%, and I'm going to give you 2. Or maybe they get a 5% listing from the seller. That's fine. I'm taking 3. I'm giving you 2. You're the one who's taking the hit. Now this is why, by the way, I don't recommend that. I do. As a matter of fact, not only do I not recommend that, I recommend against that. If you are the listing agent and you get a 6% commission, you should offer 3% to the buy side and you should take 3%. And quite honestly, if you are the listing agent and you take a 5% commission because you're weak, yes, I said it, I'm sorry if I insulted you, but if you take a 5% commission because you're weak, you should take 2 and you should offer 3% to the seller or to the buyer side. Okay? Now, that model has been thrown out the window completely. But I got to tell you, I remember things. I take notes. Now that I'm on the buy side of the transaction and I'm working with these other agents, okay, you got me on this one, but I remember, Griselda. And guess what? We may never work again together.
Exactly.
Because you took 4 and you gave me 2. And you may not care. And probably you don't care because this is how far ahead you're looking. You're looking at that one deal and you don't care whether you... Again, this business is a business of relationships. It is not just relationships with your buyers and sellers. It is relationships amongst your peers, fellow realtors, your mortgage people, your title people, your escrow people, your gardeners, your pool guys, all of that sort of stuff. So I make a note, and believe me, I make a note in the computer. I did a deal with Griselda. She offered me 2. I noticed the commission instructions came through. She took 4. And by the way, I'll call you out on it. I'll call you right up. Nice job. Wow, that's how you do business, huh? What are you talking about? I got the commission instructions today. Which, by the way, I don't know if you guys have noticed, I've noticed, in the old days, and I'm talking 6 months ago, when you got a commission instruction, it always listed both companies on the same instruction. Coldwell Banker Pioneer Real Estate, X amount of dollars. ABC Realty, X amount of dollars. And you could do the visual and you could say, oh, okay, well, the same amount, we're both getting the same amount. Okay? Or, one was X and one was Y. Okay? You know what I've noticed lately? Commission instructions only come in with your company on it. Coldwell Banker Pioneer Real Estate, $5,000. Where's the other company?
That's true.
When that's happening, you call escrow immediately. Or I call the buyer's agent or the other agent. Hey, what's up? What do you mean what's up? We're in escrow together. We're using the escrow company that you picked, by the way. And I noticed I got my commission authorization today and it only has my side on it. I can only assume that you're getting more than me. What are you getting? Oh, that's none of your business lines. I don't care. I want to know. For 27 years in this business, standard of practice has been on one commission authorization, both companies with the dollar amount. When you only see one, I guarantee you the other agent is hiding, and the fact that they're hiding means that they know, they know that they're taking advantage of you and they don't want you to know. Anyway, I remember that. I remember that. And your relationship with those realtors will be damaged. If you want to do this for 20 years or 10 years or 5 years, we are completely interdependent upon the other realtors in this business. We're working with buyers now. We're writing, for 9 months now, we've been writing blind offers. Blind offers. Writing cash offers that my buyer has never seen. What is the automatic response that you normally get from a listing agent when you write a blind offer? The automatic response is normally, matter of fact, if you look in the MLS now, it's become such a problem, people are writing and there are no blind offers will be rejected.
Right.
We're writing offers that are blind, we're telling the agents they're blind, and we're looking at the MLS that says no blind offers. But you know what? I've been in this town for 25 years. I know these people. They see Lance Martin, they see blind offer, they see Lance Martin, and they say, Lance is going to do this. They trust me, relationships, things have been done, we've performed. They know I'm not going to screw around. Now, if for the prior 20 years I've been pulling shenanigans with commission adjustments and not performing and lying to the other agents and developing the reputation, we'll leave the names out of it. If you've been in this business for any period of time, you know of a couple agents who have the reputation. And some of them are very successful. At least they appear to be successful based upon numbers of closings. But they have the reputation. These are people you do not want to do business with because you've heard or you've experienced. You don't want to be one of those agents. And this whole commission is cooperate. Whenever I see one of these come across, and it's not very often, but whenever I see one of these come across, I take a minute and I read it and I look through it, because 9 times out of 10, the people sending these are doing something wrong. Okay. Bottom line is, we don't need this. Okay. If we're doing something, if we're doing business the way we need to be doing it, shouldn't need to be. And by the way, the form wasn't designed for that. Okay. So it's I said 5 minutes. We went 20. What else is new? Okay. We have finished our 6+ hours of disclosures. 3 days. Frankly, a lot of this class is repeated when we do contract class and other sort of stuff. I don't know what we have scheduled for next Thursday. We'll figure that out since we're running late. I don't want to hold anybody any longer. But we will be meeting next Thursday and the Thursday and the Thursday and the Thursday. As far as I can tell, I've got every Thursday slated at least till the middle of August, so we won't have any skips.
July 4th falls on a Thursday.
We will do a class that week. We'll probably do it on the 3rd. That might be a bad idea, but I don't want to lose momentum. So the Thursday, July 4th class, definitely won't do it Friday because I'm going to be at the river 4th and 5th and 6th and 7th. So July 3rd, we'll do a Wednesday class. So I don't, like I said, I don't know what we have slated up next. I think we're probably listing appointments. I think we did listing contracts, so I think maybe next week and the week after we could have some fun. Let's do some actual, we do kind of mock listing presentations. Which quite honestly, if we're not doing that, if that's not what's scheduled, that's what we'll do. Because that's what we all should be doing right now. We want listing inventory. So we'll brush off the dust and brush off the rust and do some listing presentations. And we'll get that going. Okay, any questions? All right, guys.
Okay.
Thanks for your attention. I know they can be a little dry sometimes. Disclosures aren't always the funnest. So, good job.